even said it takes one generation, one, to lose our freedom. One. Now, I'm from the Gen X generation. I see that my generation has raised the millennials and the Gen Zs. I think that I don't know where it went wrong. Maybe our parents spoiled us, gave us what we never had. I don't know. I don't know what went wrong, but I think patriotism is lost, where, I send my kids to Patriot Camp because I want them to understand the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the founding of our country, and not feel ashamed of it, but to be proud of it, and to know that these were regular men and their wives as support. But these were regular, everyday men who risked everything. They risked everything to give us a nation where we get to be individuals and we get to decide for ourselves. And I imagine what the founders would think if they came to this day of time now. I mean, what would they say? Jefferson would have a lot of laughs because he'd be like, see?
They would probably go, why didn't we put an age limit on that presidential thing also?
Oh, yeah.
We had a lower window, but we need to put an upper. Well, there's a lot of questions about that, and they didn't get along or agree with each other too. I mean, you had a bipartisan infighting from day one, from the day that they locked themselves in Philadelphia in the building to subvert and write the Constitution. From day one they were fighting. You got the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist letters and all across the board. But I mean, you could go through the marks. One, we haven't elected enough William Henry Harrisons. I think that should.
Calvin Coolidge is.
Well, Coolidge is my second favorite president.
He's my favorite.
William Henry Harrison is my absolute favorite because he's the only one that didn't do anything to screw up the country. When you're only president for 34 days, it's kind of hard to mess it up. But
great term limit.
What's that?
That's the best term limit right there.
It's the ultimate one. You go out, give an extra long speech when that day you're the oldest president ever elected, and you get pneumonia, fall into a coma, and then you leave.
Knock on wood. That's terrible.
It is, and then he left.
People spend $1 billion to run for president, and
That's another thing.
The idea is great, but it's also, we're living longer now is the argument. And,
yeah.
They
can drug us through dementia, and there's the pens so you can get up and spend 10 minutes babbling on a microphone. I mean, there's a lot of things we didn't account for. And then we got the future that we've got to talk about, which if you want to hang around for some of the news, there's a couple things I think you could hang around for that we could riff on, and then a couple things maybe you shouldn't, but because you still have a good name, and we should not sully that good name yet. But let me read a couple last comments real quick. Blair Hope says, then what was the recourse with the current issue? You can't get rid of a current elected position until the next election. That could be disastrous, and could be. I think a recall for abuse of seat is the biggest message you can give for the next probably 10 people to be elected. If they see that the populace is willing to beat ground, get signatures, and fire you. I think, and that's not a message to the person you fire. That's the message to the people who replace them.
It's true. And it just depends on what the county rules or laws say about recalls and things like that. I mean, again, I wouldn't argue with Blair. I get the point. I know why the legislators do it. I know they were flooded with responses from the American people or Utah citizens saying, stop this. These mandates have to stop. They don't work. And I get that.
And I agree with Blair on that. I just wonder if what I'm worried about is, one, you've set a precedent that the state can step in and subvert a county, and you give that power. What if the state goes dominantly against you in 5 years, and then they have that power? What if that state, say, wants to disarm us?
Right. Well, the state hates the federal government stepping on our neck.
So that's why I say you hold that until it's an absolute necessarily. And then I'd like to see people get fired. You know, I mean, Trump didn't do it enough.
And I think it's healthy. It's healthy to take responsibility for your actions. So if the responsibility of voting in those local representatives is that mandate that they put upon you, you know, you got to suffer those consequences.
And you've got to vote to redirect that later. We also got to.
Without that, you're not going to be a free person.
Yep. Okay. You guys ready? We got a foreigner in the chat now. It's a guy from Dave's home nation, New York, Tim O'Connor. He's a very good friend of the show. Tim says libertarians are free to make fun of whoever we want and however we want. Unlimited freedom. I agree. And then he says, mandates, sham dates. Am I right? And he is right. Now, Tim is one of those poor hostages of New York City on the East Coast. Dave escaped. Dave, so when you escaped, did you have to like whittle a gun out of a bar of soap or buy jeweling hammers and chisel your way out? How did you get out of there?
Yeah, I had to be creative where I stored stuff on my way out.
Yeah, and speaking of that, let's do a hard segue into some news. You guys good with that?
Great.
What do you hear? I'm hearing that the feds are going to start cracking down on Bitcoin.
Yeah, you hear that every once in a while, Jared.
But we're hearing something kind of, they're typing something up now, and I'm just hearing, I haven't dug into that one too deep.
What's happened to Bitcoin? Hasn't it dropped quite a bit recently or taken a turn? I mean, somebody's talking.
Yeah, it's doing some crashing. I think that's a multitude of reasons. You got Kazakhstan in uprisal, which is all the Chinese Bitcoiners apparently went to Kazakhstan and set up shop. And then it goes into revolt, and I don't know, either they have, they're scared to continue to, peddle their wares or continue mining.
Actually, Jared, what happened was Joe Biden fixed the U.S. economy. And the dollar is such a strong
the
investment.
dollar's rising. Bitcoin's the same. I dig it. Yeah. Okay. But
They
no.
need to take power of everything. They have to take control of everything. If the government gets their hands on Bitcoin, I mean, they're going to want to, right?
They're dying for it.
The
right
whole
now.
purpose of it was the freedom of having to spend the money the way you see fit, and
Yep.
to not have the government's hands in it.
Well, can we buy our Lincoln dinner tickets in Bitcoin yet?
Oh, sure. Just Venmo me your Bitcoin, and I'll cover it.
Please. Matter of fact, Dave, Venmo me your Bitcoin, and then I'll Venmo her the honest and
good.
diligent
I
U.S.
wish.
dollar.
We're lucky we have our Tooele County Republican Party Venmo for anyone who would like to donate, and we appreciate all donations. We are trying to raise money, of course, so that we can really get behind our candidates and advertise them and support them any possible way we can. So thanks for the segue.
Yeah, you'll have to kick that link. I'll put it in the show notes. Put it in there so people can easily find it.
Excellent.
Tim said he calls it New Yorkistan, and in the interest of national security, and he's talking about them going after the Bitcoin or all cryptocurrency. I was watching his show that he does earlier today. He does a radio show back in New York. I don't know if they got to do it from a moving van in that foreign country. I don't know how they do it. Maybe there's a boat that sits out, past, 2.2 miles into the ocean in international waters.
In a
and
bunker about 4 floors down.
Yeah. I don't know how they do it. It's, it's pirate radio with that we had, us Gen Xers had when we were in high school, Anyways, but yeah, he talks about that. They talked about that today. And then they also talked about the next subject I want to roll into after this one. But I think we need to hang out on this one a little bit more. What are the maneuvers you think the feds are going to do for the cryptocurrency?
Well, of course, they're going to try to tax it. They want to tax it through exchanges. and they want exchanges to report who their customers are.
Right.
And the hard part about cryptocurrency is the know your customer laws. With the fiat systems, you have to report who you are, and if you make a transaction of $600, they'll know about it. But with Bitcoin, it's decentralized in its movements, so there's really no way to wrangle any of that information in unless you voluntarily give it up. So even with the legislation that they're trying to draw up, it doesn't physically stop movement of cryptocurrency. The only choke points that they can get are the exchanges.
But that's under our current government. What did China do 2 years ago that crunched down, that caused Bitcoin to leave?
Well, the miners were fairly out in the open with their infrastructure. So, you just send in some police in there.
So they ran off production. They didn't necessarily run off the customers. But then again, everyone in China that I know that was at the time trading in it stopped trading in it. So what did China do that they were able to wrangle that in?
Well, they would cut off the internet.
The internet. Yeah, they can shut it right down.
Yeah, that's true. And I wouldn't put it past our government having that same ability, just because they haven't used it yet.
Yeah.
Well, and or something like this where they would want to tax it, they do want people to come out of the shadows, and so they know. I mean, do you have to claim your Bitcoin on your tax return, or your tax every year? I mean, the government wants their piece.
Well, didn't they just the end of last year come out with that PSA that drug dealers have to claim their income? And thieves? It even said, even if, oh gosh. Yeah.
We're living in two different worlds. There's two different Americas. There's blue states and there's red states.
You are right on the money right there.
And
Holy
tell me,
cow.
I mean,
And
have you not thought, if our state turns purple, where do we go from Utah?
It's not even that it's blue states and blue and red states. It's that there are cities that are bigger than the not cities in each state. And
right, rural versus urban.
And when a city population outnumbers the rural population, then you're done.
Well, then you're Oregon trying to get annexed into Idaho.
Oh
By
my
big
gosh,
counties
yeah.
trying to get annexed into Idaho.
Well, and then you've got the Jefferson movement in California. It's been going on for 20 years now?
It's a frightening thought, because where do we go if we don't fix our own house and we don't keep our house accountable? Where do we go from Utah? I mean, even Texas has bricks in Texas that are not red.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I go to my brother's in Texas, and so I try to visit him as often as I can. And I love the state. I don't love the humidity in the summertime, but if I have to move somewhere from Utah.
I'm still eyeballing Wyoming.
Yeah.
What's the governor of Wyoming's name?
I don't know.
That's right. That is right. That's why I like Wyoming. I love that. I'll bet 99.8% of citizens of the United States couldn't point at Wyoming on a map.
Well, I could. But you keep talking about it, you're going to make them angry. People started talking about Montana,
That's
and now Montana has a housing crisis.
Oh, and they are Montana's schizophrenic. That place has a Democrat governor one minute, and they're making weird mandates. What do you think about what happened? What was it? Early in the mid-early last year, when the Idaho governor went to Texas for that meeting. The lieutenant governor jumped in and wrote all those anti-mandate laws. What do you think about that?
I did not hear about that.
Oh man, it was Idaho's, and it was the funniest thing. So the governor, the governor, a guy, the lieutenant governor, a lady. The governor went to Texas to attend like a Republican convention of whatever sort. The lieutenant governor steps into office for this 4-day period, writes all these anti-COVID mandate laws and everything. And the governor has to leave early to haul butt back to try to rescind them before they get put in place.
Oh my word.
It was hilarious.
Is that even legal?
I don't know.
Lieutenant
What's legal? That's the issue, is what's legal. One, we've handed so much over to the government. How can we tell what's legal? The 10th Amendment, there's, 25,000 people in this city of Tooele, and 8 of us know what the 10th Amendment is? Where are we at? So I don't know.
Shall not be infringed. I mean, how hard is that?
Yeah, well, it's
apparently it's hard.
Yeah.
It's the cause of many debates. We just need some smart, logical gun control.
Well, I'm yeah, well, my gun control's right here.
Sarcastic about that, but that's what they say. Or we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, what we need to do is, I think every law needs to have a twilight date in it. I think 5 years. The law disappears after 5 years, and you have to reevaluate it and put it back in after 5 years.
Again, I'm going to follow down your strain of thinking here and think about the law enforcement that has to enforce said laws, and think, how do we have good law enforcement if laws are changing or reverting back or going back? Our law enforcement couldn't possibly keep up with that.
Yeah, well, that's because we've handed over all sorts of weird stuff to them. Nonviolent crimes. Law enforcement is going to come hold you on the side of the road so they can bring a dog over to sniff your car. You're there for 45 minutes. They don't find any drugs, but the dog, wiggled its tail wrong when it got by that left rear tire. So they tear your car apart and physically damage it on the side of the freeway, endangering your life, endangering your property, find nothing. And where are we at? Because the government wrote a law and the law enforcement are forced to enforce it.
Well, and I have to say that I am a huge fan of law enforcement, and I was raised by law enforcement, and I have family in law enforcement currently. So I do appreciate the way that you phrase that, because they have to enforce laws. Right?
Well, yeah.
That's their job. But they also, there is a line where they get to make a decision and a judgment call. I mean, that's always there. So if you have law enforcement doing that just to mess with you, I would report
maybe
that.
it's not to mess with you. Maybe it's the beginning of the month. Maybe you hit all those precursors that they're taught for, because I am ex-law enforcement myself. And you're taught to look for, it's a crappy old car with brand new tires. It's probably mule and drugs. Give that car extra attention. Find a reason to pull it over and then get extra attention. Maybe it's just a guy who loves that old Cutlass. Doesn't care about it, but he likes good tires on that old Cutlass. But he's getting extra attention because he fits precursors.
Well, I would like to join on this by saying that I'm disgusted by the amount of money getting taken off citizens and no crimes being charged against them. And that's not just by law enforcement per se. I mean, at the airport and they're taking it. And these people are not charged with anything, and they just have to.
We don't have to talk about taxes today, Holly. We don't have to talk about taxes. We can talk about legitimate actions that law enforcement and other agencies do.
Well, and I think that it's really hard. I think it's hard for the citizen to actually, that's gotten out of control. And that's also been endorsed by our current leader years ago on the Senate floor.
Wrote it.
That is going to be the thing.
94 crime bill. It's one of the most horrendous actions ever done to the United States populace. That's a scary
I think that it's the job of our leaders to change it, especially locally. Again, you have a federal government that's trying to tell all of our states how to run, right? Run our education. They're trying to run. They're running anywhere they possibly can get away with it. But there are certain things that we as a state need to stop. And that's one of them. And one of the big cases right now, the Supreme Court, the gentleman who lost his money coming back, he had his life savings. It was, I want to say 84,000, but it could be wrong on the number. But he was stopped for something. They found the money. He admitted to having the money. He was going to buy something, a classic car or something, but they took it.
And now he's got to go to court and prove that money wasn't gotten through drugs.
4 years he's been in court over it.
That is the war on drugs. This is probably an honest citizen. And he has been
It's not his job
robbed.
to prove that he's not.
Well, no,
That's the problem.
but that
It's the
90
government's job to prove he is a criminal. Yet,
sure,
why do they get to keep his money?
if you ignore the laws on the books right now that need to have a twilight date on them, they need to die, because the law is written in the 94 crime bill that due process when it comes to drug enforcement doesn't matter. How many innocent people have been harmed in SWAT raids because of due process being ignored?
Well, it's definitely something that needs to be
Yeah.
looked at and figured out. Because, there's a lot of officers that are killed unnecessarily in that same aspect. And
Very true.
I hate how dangerous law enforcement's become. I hate that so many people, and I don't say Utah per se. I think people in Utah are very kind and to our law enforcement. I did see what happened in Salt Lake City though during the BLM situation. I was scared for the officers that responded there.
Who was that?
I personally know a few that were hurt.
Who was that I don't know if it was a guy or a girl that on camera relieved themselves on the upside down on fire cop car.
Oh yeah.
I want that person. I hope that person one day watches this. You may not achieve much in life. You may be
They found that person.
an empty-headed
She's been
moron.
laid up, actually.
They found her.
You may be a worthless human being, but you're famous and will be remembered forever. That's all I got to say for them. You took that moment, you grasped that moment of glory, and
Made her family proud.
I'm telling you, and I know you didn't plan it. You didn't bring like a wet wipe with you, so you probably walked around a little itchy and grungy the rest of the day, but you are now famous.
Well, how about BLM for actually utilizing a mentally ill person for their cause?
Huh.
I mean, it's like trying to get go to a mental facility and strike up votes.
People do that.
There's a Democrat Party out there. We don't need to be talking about them today. Anyways, I apologize, but let's do into that. Let's do kind of a hard segue. Now, I don't have this bill pulled up right now in front of me, but we talked about it last week. I'm going to try to see if I can. No. Okay. There's a Utah bill up for vote this year to make, what it's doing is it's regulating how, warrants are delivered. It limits no-knock search warrants, which I completely agree with. So it makes it so that you have to meet a higher threshold to be issued a no-knock search warrant. And even under that circumstance, you have to knock and announce twice before you enter. It also sets up times when warrants are to be initiated without exigent circumstances, which hopefully, as it plays out, means that unless someone's life is in immediate danger, all warrants are going to be delivered in a civilized manner as the Magna Carta laid it out 4,000 years ago.
I think that's great.
I think it'll save
such danger.
It'll save cops. It'll save cops' lives. It'll save their jobs. It'll save them paperwork. If you act civilized on, if you're going to enforce laws, I think you need to stand above the rest. So you need to act in a better manner than the bottom feeders act. And I think as long as we write laws that allow them to do that, it protects them as well.
Well, here's the thing. I think anyone who serves in law enforcement, who's a first responder, anyone who serves in the military is already a better person than most of us that live on this planet. And I say that because there takes an instinct and there takes a love for the job, and there also takes some incredible courage to run towards danger, to be the person that is going to go in on no-knock warrants. Terrifying to me, even the thought of it. but I know it's not without cause and reason. Now, how the law enforcement is evolved and what they require and no knock warrants, yeah, they can always fix it. And if it saves police lives, I'm for it. But I am biased when it comes to law enforcement, having been raised by a man who served 41 years and I have a brother who's currently serving. I know I've lived in a police car most of my young life with my father at patrol. It's a terrifying job to regular people, just like what you do in the military. Regular people are terrified by it. They want you to do it over there where they're not seeing it. Of course, we don't want to see military on their streets here in America, but you know what I'm saying is what you do is what you do because you were brave enough to do it. I think this is the same with law enforcement. They are set apart and they do stand at a different level. So any veteran, any current serving member, the military, law enforcement, firemen, EMTs, those people have so much risk and so little reward that I think any law that would protect them or less laws that they have to enforce, constitutional laws, you know, when an officer has to determine whether something's constitutional or whether or not they're supposed to enforce this law or, you know, to me, that's not their job. It's our leadership's job to make laws clear and be held accountable for those laws. And our officers are getting thrown to the wolves more times than not by mayors, by governors, by presidents, because they're doing a job that they're trained to do. And yet they're judged based on a second decision. 1 second they had to make that decision.
Well, that's another thing is they'll write a law in a manner that if it's unpopular to the community, the law enforcement officer eats that action.
Oh,
They'll train them. They'll train them. They'll outline a book that tells them to enforce that way. I mean, we don't need to bring up Sicknick right now, but he was trained exactly how he operated. The one thing that he did wrong was he got into a crowd that was yelling at him and froze up. That's honestly, I think, my opinion, what got him on the hook.
Hey, Holly,
yes, sir.
do you know how our representatives in Tooele County, our state representatives, how they feel about this bill?
I personally don't. In fact, I'm just learning this for the first time. I'm trying to go through the day-to-day. Plus, we have resolutions in this SEC that I'm in a meeting in tomorrow, which is the governing body for the state party. So a lot of the bills on legislature, I haven't had a chance to go through. But again, you can contact Merrill Nelson. You can contact Doug Sagers, Daniel Thatcher, and Scott Sandel. These guys need to hear from you on laws like this. I hope that you are blowing up their email or their phones. I mean, I know Doug answers the phone and Merrill answers the phone when they can. Of course, when they're up there during the day, they may not be able to. But I mean, I've seen bills come across, you know, that were coming up. One was that law enforcement had to hire or have their own liability insurance. The police officer. Oh my gosh!
That one I don't
Merrill
like.
Nelson just going. I was so angry, and he said, "Don't worry, this is ridiculous."
That's a non-starter anyway. Well, first of all, to do it, you would have to pay the police officer. It's House Bill 245.
Well, and that was what, last year.
Is it last year?
And when I saw that,
2021.
So upsetting. Again,
No,
police officers don't make what doctors make, and they have to carry that same insurance.
This is 245. This is the one on search warrants, if I remember. I'm trying to look it up, but yeah.
Well, now there's another thing we need to talk about with search warrants. When do you have to have a search warrant to look at someone's phone?
Ooh.
Nowadays, a lot of people are putting all their data on phones.
How about Woods Cross? Just got a electronic device sniffing dog. Is that going to have to be a warrant issued to allow that dog to sniff your car, or is law enforcement just going to come and bring that dog around to sniff in your general direction, find an electronic device, and then look through it and then find justification for looking through it after?
Are they talking, is it a dog trained to sniff just electronics, or is it gunpowder related where it's
Nope,
bomb related?
just electronics. And I hope they never bring
What
a
would the
gunpowder
point be?
sniffing dog around me. That dog would lose its mind.
Well, what would the point of that be, to have an electronic
Child porn.
sniffing dog?
Child porn, yeah.
On your car? I mean, or on your phone?
Well, it's
Doesn't
gonna
every human have a phone?
it's gonna sniff out electronics. So I imagine the idea is that they're gonna pull this dog in after they've executed a search warrant for supposed child porn into a home to see if there's any
into a home.
any stuff hidden. But
It could be used for Bitcoin too.
it can be used just to hunt down is it going to be limited to after they've already got a warrant to pull that dog in, or is it going to be used a little more passively, like the drug sniffing dog use has morphed? Because that dog initial use was to seek the drugs that they believe are hidden on warrant execution, and now it's morphed into they pull you over on the side of the road if they feel froggy. Now, I support law enforcement. I think they have a terrible job. But that dog will be pulled into a traffic violation to sniff for drugs then. And that's a warrantless, and they'll hold you. They'll detain you while they want to bring the dog up, even if it's 45 minutes, which breaches the unreasonable detainment clause, but it's still done, and it's done all the time, and it's written into law.
Well,
But-
yeah, I think that's a problem. But again,
Yeah.
officers,
Well, it's
they
not
have a
that
responsibility, but again, I know
it's not that
somebody
they're
that's gonna
doing
fight it
wrong.
is going to be the one that's going to get the most attention when they're going, I don't want you to search my car. Why? Because I have nothing in it. I have nothing to hide. but
Because
I'm
I don't
giving
wanna-
up my Fourth Amendment.
I
Right?
don't want to pick my crap up off the side of the road. That's why. That's
Right.
the number one. Because when you search the car, as I have, you throw their crap out on the side of the road.
Well, that is rude. You should be more careful.
That's how it
with your car.
works. Can we have a fun hard segue?
Sure.
You guys want a fun one? This is my favorite story ever. I'm telling you, this is the gods kiss this story. Okay. I'm reading this one off of Yahoo News.
Oh, there's a good one.
Yeah.
Roughly.
There's a source.
Hey, it gets better, especially if you're a veteran. Roughly 100 New Mexico guardsmen set to fill as substitute teachers. Huh?
Oh, that's perfect.
Huh? How do you think this is going to go when they pull? Now, I don't know what New Mexico's National Guard. Here in Utah, our National Guard is artillery. That's our main focus. And New York is infantry. Idaho, their main National Guard focus is cavalry, M1 Abrams drivers. So I don't know what New Mexico's is, but just imagine what these students are going to learn with some grunts teaching them in school.
Oh, they're going to erase hundreds of years of indoctrination and communism.
Well, what's happening? What's happening that they need to bring in the National Guard to be substitutes? Are their teachers all on strike or
All
what?
right. Roughly 100 New Mexico National Guard troops are set to deploy to fill critical teacher shortages in public schools in an effort to avoid a return to remote learning. So the teachers probably don't want to go back to school. They're scared of COVID. The move marks yet another entry into the Guard's growing portfolio of missions since the pandemic began.
And this is just more proof that you don't need to go to school to become a teacher.
I cannot wait until they bring that buck sergeant in who's done 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq and has shrapnel in him, and try to keep him from not swearing and spitting his chew spit on the floor. I cannot wait.
Well, and he actually teaches them something about history.
Well,
They didn't know.
they throw him into math, and he's in there day one asking around who's the smartest kid at math, because he's not going to know. I mean, yeah.
Some will.
Oddly enough, if you go to anywhere near sniper school, you better be good at algebra. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, I think it's a misnomer to say that our military won't know. I think they'll do a fine job, and actually,
Well, okay.
I think they.
100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, in this country right now, many public schools teach out of a textbook to teach your kid how to text.
Yeah. Well,
So,
how do you
These guys
keep
can
him?
walk in and read that book to them, and
How do you keep him from cursing?
oh, you don't.
I mean, you know,
How do you?
And
You
then-
don't. I don't know that you can.
as a veteran myself, yeah, I'm sure they'll do fine at teaching the regular stuff and history. I could go off on a side note. I had a teacher in high school that was a Vietnam vet when I went to Idaho for 6 months. And I can't, we spent a year of history class on just Vietnam.
Okay, I had one in junior high, Vietnam vet, and every class we talked about in the bush.
Yep. Yeah.
I learned my father was actually in the bush in the army, and he never talked about it.
No.
I was on the ground in the bush, and I would come home and tell him these stories about my teacher in the bush, and he's just like, he's right.
Well, yeah. No, but it's weird when you take a world history class and 6 months of it is just on not even the history of Vietnam, a 7-year history of a moment in Vietnam. When Vietnam, if you want to study its history, that country was at war for 40 years. I mean, the first of it was at war with Japan, and then after Japan gets beat, France comes back and Vietnam had a taste for it. So then it's at war with France, and then it beats France, and then it goes at war with itself, and that's going along pretty well. And then we jump into that war, and then it's at war with us, not going too good there. And then a little known fact that I'm going to enlighten you to, the worst part of their war was the war that Vietnam went to against Cambodia after we left, that was a proxy war between China and Russia. But no one hears about that because our 7-year window shades both of those.
I think the public has such a short memory now.
Mhm.
And like this vote, and we're coming back to the vote in legislature that just happened, Blair's right. People wanted these mandates ended. They'll be ended.
Yeah.
Those who would have instated them in their counties would maybe not be up for election for another 2 years or whatever, and the public would forget. That's just what happens right now. Vietnam is on the minds of us Gen Xers because our parents served there, or, we actually heard the stories. But, my kids don't understand Vietnam. My son's right now learning World War II, and I don't want to miss a beat of it. I want him to see every tiny lead up to what happened. Not, first they come for your guns, then they censor you, and then they divide you and label you, and everybody you have to have an enemy.
Has he learned World War I?
Yeah, well, he's done with World War I. We're going to World War II now.
Well,
And
World War I
loves
is
history.
World War I is the reason for the world we live in right now.
It is a precursor.
Well, it lined it out. All of the Middle Eastern countries that are at war with themselves, World War I, all of them. Germany's rise into where they went, Treaty of Versailles, all
And
of it.
their failure, which started World War II. Them wanting to come back from World War I. It's a terrible thing. Wars are terrible. If we can avoid them, we should absolutely avoid them. If we have to leave them, we should leave them better than we left them. And again, the people are forgetting about Afghanistan. It was months ago.
Yeah.
And if we don't remind people of that, it's like Benghazi all over again.
Well,
Just with a lot more. How much we made a terrorist group one of the top armies in the world. The top 20. What are they? 18th or something?
Yeah. One of the
our military
heaviest armed.
Have not messed with their planes, they would have a military like Canada's.
Well,
if you think
I
about
don't know why you got to dog the Taliban and comparing them to Canada. I mean, come on. But no, you're right. We did. And yeah, I'm afraid, well, doesn't the Afghanistan and Iraq wars feel different than, say, World War I and World War II had a definitive narrative? Maybe not in the beginning. Maybe that narrative was formed after.
I know what you mean, because
But
they're fighting an idea in our generation, but they were fighting actual bad guys. I don't know. I picture the Nazi symbol, and I think that's what we're fighting against.
Well, it feels different, but World
That's
War
a little
One.
different.
I mean, World War One. Let's face it, the beginning of the war, who was the bad guy? I know the reason we joined the British in World War One on their side, because we didn't know who we were going to join up until a month before. Matter of fact, the populace didn't want to join; they were browbeat into it. But the reason we joined them was because we lent them the most money to wage war, and we didn't want to lose that money.
Well, do you know what feels really different, Jared? It's weird when we hear about our leaders talking about financial aid to the Taliban, because they were our enemies a few months ago.
Absolutely.
Or how about
And that's our money.
how
That's
about
our
Al
money.
Qaeda? You know, we've got to join Al Qaeda in Syria to fight against Assad. Did you just say Al Qaeda? Yeah, we
Or
got to
you
join.
and Kinder Al Qaeda.
Yeah, well, it's we call them ISIS, and they've got a pretty big production that's probably ran by our State Department. But come on now, they're the good guys now, because Assad's the bad guy. And yes, I understand that in this modern day war, we seem to have worked from east to west along a line that would be awful, convenient to run a oil delivery pipeline through. But never mind that. And it's all against Iran. Let's remember, no, it's ridiculous. We're puppets to make someone else rich. And that's all we've been doing.
Wow. I think it's just sad. I think we need to focus on our own country before we start saving the rest of the world. And honestly, we have a great country. We have an amazing country.
Yes, we
are
do.
an experiment that is still going, and I don't want to lose our freedom in this one generation. I think we all should fight for it and fight hard to keep it.
What do you think initiated our country being so great? What do you think made us this great experiment?
I think it was the divine inspiration that our founders had. Many of them, when they were talking about, when they were writing Thomas Jefferson's writing the Declaration of Independence, and he's talking to Franklin, and they're saying, you should change this, or some of your wording. And he said, absolutely not. This was like divine inspiration, writing this. It was bigger than his time, what he was writing. It was well beyond his time. It was a far-thinking, far imaginative, amazing declaration, but it was divinely inspired. It was like, I think they had God on their side. And I think even on Lincoln's time, at a time when he should have lost a great battle, his soldiers were down, and he thought, how am I going to get through this? And what did he do? He prayed. And he said, just give me the words. Give me the words to inspire and to protect this nation of yours. And he went out and he gave a speech, and his military won this great battle to preserve our country, because it was on the precipice of loss.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
God inspires throughout history.
What do you think
special?
What do you think is the difference? What is the thing that was done different than prior nations that allowed this explosion? I mean, granted, we understand there was an explosion in industry through the 1900s, but that's because Europe burned itself to the ground. But what caused that, especially through the 1800s, that explosion in innovation that kicked off over here?
I think that when you don't have a king taxing you, and when you have responsibility for yourself, these people came over, they had to build, they had to farm, they had to create communities, they had to get along, and they were free to worship. They didn't have a king that was taking everything they made. There weren't paupers and kings. There was colonies.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that was different than what, and what anything had ever been in the world. These people were starting something, and they were starting it together, but individuals who believed that there could be something great, and it was hope.
Mm.
I mean, at the end of the day, it was hope. And I think a lot can be said when you have a free nation where people can be free thinkers and they can be innovators. And there's a reason why the United States has been one of the biggest innovators of our time. Germany used to be that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their machines and their science, they were phenomenal. But what ruined it? A fascist government ruined it. I mean,
we have two oceans, a Pacific and an Atlantic, and it keeps the barbarians away. So we have Mexico to the south, we got Canada to the north. It really frees us up to be a free people without much to worry about.
True.
And even now, when Russia invades Ukraine, if they do, it's really not going to affect us other than we're going to have to sell a lot more products to probably Russia and Ukraine area to rebuild them.
Hey, the mail order bride market might get a little cheaper, so.
Or you might have to send a lot more lipstick over there or something.
It could be one way. Well, I like what you said there, Holly. It breaks my heart because I feel like we've lost a lot of that, and hopefully we can get it back. But I like what you said there. I would add in the one thing that we did different was property rights.
yeah.
And
But do we have them really?
we don't. Not if you have to pay taxes on your property every year. You've lost them. You're renting that.
Don't
If
carry money in your car.
If I was in office and I had any power at all, the biggest thing I would do is create either, property taxes are a must if we're going to educate our kids. Now, that's a whole different subject. But I think for seniors and veterans, I think property tax should either be zero or there should be a fine ending point. You pay X percent and that is it. Doesn't go up and down. Senior citizens live on a fixed income and now they have to adjust for property tax.
Yeah.
Senior citizens who own these farms and they're generation, and yet now they're going to lose their farm because they missed a tax payment.
That
do they
is
ever
scary.
really own it? That's upsetting to me. I think senior citizens, and I'm sorry, but we need to give veterans everything that's possible in this country. Because I tell you, you guys know, you signed a blank check. And the fact that you're sitting here, it shows that you got luckier than some.
Well, I was in at a time when we weren't at war, so I didn't. The guys nowadays, Dave was even one of those. They paid the price. I had an easy time in, but I think the ultimate
You signed
thing.
that check, and anything could have happened at any time.
I think the only
People
thing.
that joined in, August of 2001.
Yeah, those
Those
guys.
guys weren't at war. There was no war. There was no worries. I'm going to get free college. Whoops.
I got a little brother
Never.
who jumped into that. But I think the big thing that we can do for veterans is to ensure that we don't have any more foyers abroad that are for any of the wrong reasons. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I think we shouldn't have went off in World War I. I think by doing that, we set the Western liberal world into turmoil that caused World War II, caused Vietnam, caused the Cold War. That World War I, if you study it, was the thing that ruptured and when I say liberal, I don't mean Democrat. I mean John Lockean liberal world, a world that was free, and it was destroyed in that 4-year period.
That's really, it's something to think about. I need to go back and learn more. There's a lot of wars we shouldn't have been involved in.
Yeah.
But, our greatest generation
Mm-hmm.
in World War II, I can't imagine us not going there.
But what
I
if we
can't
didn't
imagine.
have to? What if
That'd
that
be
didn't
nice.
happen? What if the Weimar Republic didn't inflate their money? It's a note to people today. We're inflating money. That's what caused the the Nazi party to gain prevalence was because the Weimar Republic had to inflate money to pay back France for World War I, which they didn't kick off. They were just the dominant power on the other side, so they got all the punishment for what Austria did. And so and I'm not justifying anything that anyone did. But what if we'd have sat back?
Well, we did drag our feet for a while.
We did until it came to a long enough standstill that we were worried that Great Britain was going to not be able to pay us back that 3 years of money they lent. And we would have got in probably 8 months earlier if Blackjack Purging wouldn't have said, I'm training my troops first.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to think about. It's a lot to chew on. There is, I mean, up
You're
until...
a really good time on a Friday night.
Yeah. Well, I'm heading to... I'm heading, but I want to close out on that, on the message. I like what you got going on, Holly, and I like that you have a good knowledge on you, and I'm not saying you speak out against the party or anything like that, but you have your own mind, and you're not stepping in here with just a party message, because you have your own message, and I like that, and I'm proud to know you. I'm glad that you're a part of this show. You know?
Oh, I've loved this. And I honestly have to say that our party is not a toe the line, straight shooter, everybody steps in lockstep. We don't do that, especially in this county. We love our rural community. Most of us moved here. A lot of us moved here for this piece of paradise. And I've lived here 20 years.
Where'd you move
a lot
from?
of us, I lived in Taylorsville, West Valley area.
Oh, okay.
Granger High School.
Yeah, I went to Granger for a minute.
Did you?
Yeah, 92.
Are you kidding?
No,
I was in Granger in 92.
Was you? Yeah, I went there for a minute. I was not a very good student. I got kicked out of a couple of schools.
No kidding.
Yeah, but no, I went to Granger. Yeah, I enjoyed it there. I lived with my cousin for a while after I think I was kicked out of Grantsville just before Granger. But yeah, I enjoyed it there. It was
sounds like a separate show altogether. So be sure to invite me back.
Yeah, do you remember, what was the drafting teacher's name? Mr. Started with an E. I don't know.
I didn't do drafting. I don't remember.
Anyway, he was from Grantsville. He was in my ward. I'll remember his name any minute now. But I go to school there, and I'm like, drafting, I'll take it. And shows up the guy that lived 3 houses down from me in Grantsville was my teacher.
Oh, I loved Granger.
Yeah.
Well, back then, Grantsville was 3 houses, right?
Yeah.
4. There was one on the other side of me. That was Grandma.
Well, what do you think of the growth in Grantsville?
Think of the road?
The growth.
Oh, yeah,
Grantsville's growth.
Grantsville is a happening place in Utah right now.
It's beautiful still, though. I mean, when I'm in Grantsville, it's like a big little town.
Yeah, there's still it feels like it's on a precipice where things are going to start happening there. They need more business growth. I've been working with Mayor Critchlow. We're trying to get local businesses highlighted there so we can keep commerce in Grantsville as much as we can. And
you have to have commerce in order to have a successful city.
Yep.
You really do. And I think citizens of our county, you can't push it enough. You've got to buy your gas here. You've got to shop here. You've got to shop local. If you want to keep businesses alive and attract more to come, you have to buy and shop local. So I love that you're helping small businesses. And even people don't realize there's some people on one hand, they want to keep a small town, but the other, they cry that we don't have a Costco. Well, to have a Costco, you need 200,000 plus people in your population. Our county currently has 76,000 and growing.
200.
Well, and
and that's in a county.
Anti-development, but you want a Costco.
That's in a huge county. We have that many people.
Yes.
Costco's not going to count.
County in the state.
Yeah, Costco's not going to count Iosepa. Costco's not going to count Wendover. Costco's might say, we'll add Vernon in. But they're not going to count all that. So they're just going to look at the metropolitan area here from Stansbury up to Lake Point out to Grantsville. That's it.
True. And Tooele City.
Well, that's what I mean. Tooele is in the middle of
Right.
that, and Stansbury and
You know, in
Erda.
market research, my husband and I were looking to do a brick and mortar store years ago, and we decided to do a market research to see where the best place would be to have our store. And you know, it was $5,000 to do the research, but what came back is they told us to put our store on 5600 West because the 84074 zip code shops on 5600 West for all the items that they want that are, I mean, that's where Costco is doing those same tests, those same things. And they're thinking, why build in Tooele County when I can build in Magna and have all of West Valley, West Jordan, and all that area. I can build in West Valley, and these people will travel because they're so used to traveling, which is true. We all are used to traveling to go to the big city if we want to go, you know, to a nightclub or, you know, to a Costco.
Yeah.
To a fancy dancy theater where you can eat dinner at, you know, we're used to it. Traveling's no big deal for people that are accustomed.
We're not getting to Costco, people.
Well, now hold on. If our dear leader has his way, we may not be able to drive anymore, so we might see it come back.
Well, I mean, you get that electric car, and it'll take you 100 miles. So
That was the next thing I was going to lead into, but me and Dave are going to have to hold on to that because we've had you for 2 hours now, and
I told you, Dave. I don't. He's like 30 minutes. Is that good? Yeah. No.
We're going to do a part 2.
we need to have you back, definitely, and we need to have you back within the next few weeks. And after Dave gets done with his contagious Typhoid Mary actions, we'll have you in studio and you know, get some more in-depth chat. But I have I'm heading to Stansbury Park right after this. There is a meeting at the clubhouse talking about
School board.
school board. Natalie Klein's going to be there, but it's a family Liberty family group that are meeting up there, so I'm going to meet with them and hobnob and rub elbows and educate myself a little bit. So that's going to be a good time, but it has been a delight to have you on. It really has.
Oh, thank you. I've really had a good time. I really appreciate that you making this work, Dave, and I appreciate both of you, what you do. And you know, as a member of the SEC, we did vote against any of what she's going to talk about tonight regarding the critical race theory being taught in schools, and some of the books that are being showed to your kids in public school. And if your kids can't be in a school where you have a say, pull them out. And sometimes it's going to be hard, but I mean, we have an excellent, I'm really proud of our school that my kids are in. They go to Excelsior Academy in Erda, and I feel like I have a say. I feel like they listen, and I feel like my kids are getting smarter and growing without all this extra, you know, that other kids in public schools are dealing with. So I hope you have a great evening tonight. I was going to go to that, and I had you guys, so I didn't know that I'd make it.
Well, it's at 6:30, so I hope I see you there. Now, I'm obviously not taking Dave because I don't want to drop the neutron bomb in the middle of the county. You know,
how do you get it twice? I don't understand. Back to back? I mean, you still have it?
I still have it.
It's the same one. It's lingering in
Has it
him.
been 10 days?
Well, it's been a while. I won't lie.
Yeah.
You should do a saline nasal cleanse. They say that this COVID will live in the nasal fibula. What are they called? The little hairs.
In the nose hairs. You know what? You could get a Chihuahua because they like to stick their tongues up your nose. It's rather gross. But
Do that. I mean, saline cleanses are uncomfortable anyway.
I'll borrow yours, Jared.
I think I could train her up. But no, but we need to have you in studio. I bought all the stuff to make some awesome Bloody Marys tonight, and I drank Dr. Pepper because Dave wasn't here. So
It is called a happy hour, isn't it?
it is called the happy hour. Hey,
I got my vitamin C mix.
There we
Good.
go. And it didn't go off the rails, so it went a little bit close to him. You know, I tend to do that, but thank you so much, Holly. This has been outstanding. Real quick before we go, lay out any contact information in case anyone wants to get a hold of you, wants to seek out either how they can get assistance from the Republican Party to run, or if they want to lend assistance to the Republican Party to bolster it in the county.
Excellent. My name is Holly Crowley, Rabanne. You can find me on Facebook, or you can text me at 801-599-3110. I am happy to take calls anytime. If you're interested in running, always know that you need to go through the Tooele County Clerk, Tracy Shaw, if you're running for a county seat. And if you plan on getting signatures, you absolutely need to be registered through the state or county before you're collecting any signatures. She will give you the packets and all of that. But now's the time. Deadlines, or that just started January 3rd. You've got till March 11th to gather signatures. You need to file a declaration to do so. March 7th is when you can start going to file to run through the caucus system and delegates. Caucus is March 8th, and we will be advertising it on the Tooele County Republican page, and I'll be sure to advertise it throughout the county as well, and on Election Central. It's Democrat and Republicans will caucus, so you can just pay attention to that and get to your local place. And then our Lincoln Day dinner. I've had people reach out during this show about tickets for the Lincoln Day. Invitations will be sent out. I'll even have the invitation posted on our Tooele County Republican Party pages. Anyone, just sign up and follow us, and you'll get our updates. And so you'll be able to attend. We have limited number of seats available, and so I recommend you get tickets early. But I would love to, I love that you guys are interviewing candidates. I'm excited to invite you and have you talk to our candidates that evening. You would be my guest, and I think it would be a really fun.
Ooh, I'm wearing a tux.
Oh, man.
What if I wore
Now you're talking.
like a tux t-shirt, you know?
Hey, in this county, look,
Chic.
Lincoln Day dinner, I find an excuse to wear a beautiful gown. I love to do that. Do you know what I love about our county is we have guys show up in a suit jacket, jeans, and cowboy boots.
Yeah, I'll
And
bring my dad. It'll be bib overalls and some Russian hat. My dad, I think, was a delegate last go round.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Craig Anderson.
I don't have the list in front of me,
I
but
think
he
he
was.
was.
He had to be for 4 years, so we're grateful for him. And
I'm not sure. I have to re-ask him. I know he goes to all the stuff. He's a good, diligent Republican, and you know, maybe I'll bring him as my date. It's my +1. But
maybe he'll rub off on you. Anarchy's not the way. We have to have some organized.
I used to be a Republican.
Well,
Though the only time I've ever
brother.
voted for president was a Democrat.
Wow, you are a conundrum.
I just don't.
You don't have time to go off this rail.
I don't. I've got a hot date with some
right there, Jerry.
with some liberty. Thank you so much, Holly. We're gonna have you back. You're gonna be in studio, and man, I can't wait. I can't wait to get you back in here, Dave. I'm fitting to make some mean Bloody Marys. I've got some special stuff for it.
Don't tease me to hear myself.
Dude, I saw one.
Yeah, cure yourself.
I saw one where they made one. It was in a pitcher, right? And had a whole chicken in the top. Like a rotisserie chicken in the top, and bacon.
My word.
And
I'm
shrimp.
happy with a pickle spear and some olives.
Oh, man. I'm
What a
telling you.
brisket.
Brisket, shrimps.
Why is my mouth watering? That's weird.
That's right.
I love shrimp. I love shrimp in a Bloody Mary, though.
Oh, that is right.
And no ice.
No ice. Okay. Well, I'll remember that. All right, you guys, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This was a real interesting conversation. And if you are looking for information on the Republican Party in the county, reach out to Holly. Become involved. I would suggest that that it's a good outlet. And as you can tell with this conversation tonight, she is very approachable. She's very intelligent, and she's motivated, and I like that. And we're going to roll all the candidates through here because we think that getting to know your candidates' policies, regardless of party or affiliation or leaning, or like me, not leaning, that gives you the best ability to, form where you live into a place you want to continue to live.
Control your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our world's about.
Yes.
A cog on the wheel, make the process turn.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we decide that process. So we need to stay active, and we can't just throw our hands up and say, well, I've been to meetings, or I've seen it happen, or I've emailed. You know what? Show up and be involved. And if you're not motivated to, then reach out to those of us who are.
Holly, move to the right just a little bit. We've lost half. There we go.
Sorry.
Close
I'm
out
leaning.
so we can see you.
I'm like leaning on my chair.
Yeah.
And it's dark at my house.
Well, it's outlined you in the light quite well.
Oh my gosh, sorry. I should probably turn lights on, but then
you look just fine in the camera.
Show's over, so
yeah. But anyways,
did our bit.
Well, feel better, David. You have fun tonight, Jared. If I see you there, I'll flag you down.
Perfect. It definitely will. And one day it'd be nice to off camera have a little history conversation.
I'd love that.
Because that's where I like to chat. That's the good stuff. And then I get drunk and it goes way off the rails. But that'll be happening as soon as Dave gets back. All right, you guys. Have a good night. We did. This has been real fun.
The happy hour.
The happy hour.
It's been a happy 2 hours. I'm so grateful you invited me.
The happy 2 hours. Hey, and you're welcome back anytime. Anytime, just throw us a message. We'll get you on.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Everyone have a good night, and we will see you next week.